Hey everybody, and welcome to Coding with Roby, where we go over everything new technologies and new code to keep up with modern development. I'm Eric Roby, and today we're going to be going over FastAPI. Now, FastAPI is a micro web framework that allows us to rapidly be able to create RESTful APIs using Python. Now, a RESTful API is a way that we can just communicate data over HTTP, and we're going to be using request methods like get, post, put, and delete to really be able to manipulate data that's getting sent over the server and over HTTP to our FastAPI application. Now, using FastAPI comes with a few advantages. The first, as the name suggests, is creating RESTful APIs is extremely fast. I mean, we're going to be able to create our first RESTful API in just a few lines of code. And now the second advantage of using FastAPI is that it comes with Pydantic. And Pydantic is a technology used for data validation. And in this tutorial, we're going to be creating a book object in Python. And one of the fields in our book object is going to be the author who created the book. And we're also going to make sure the user can only type in 1 to 100 characters for the author's name. Now, if we weren't using Pydantic, we would have to write code to validate how many characters the user is submitting with the author field. However, using Pydantic, Pydantic will handle all of this by itself when we create the object itself. Now, this removes so much time from the developer that they no longer have to create code to validate data. We can just continue creating code for the application and let Pydantic do all of the data validation itself. And now the third huge advantage of using FastAPI is that it comes with an embedded Swagger UI documentation, which means it creates all of the documentation for our APIs automatically. And now this is extremely powerful and again just saves time for the developer. Inside the Swagger UI documentation, it's going to have areas for us to be able to test our application and test our code and call our APIs, along with being able to have naming conventions for our APIs so we can quickly look back and see how our application was created. Now, FastAPI is one of my favorite micro web frameworks for Python, and I hope you enjoy it too. So without further ado, let's jump into the code. So first thing first, I'm going to open up my PyCharm, and PyCharm are just an IDE and integrated development environment that I'm going to be using for Python development and for this FastAPI video. Now the first thing I did was just create an empty directory on my desktop. So I'm going to open that now. Inside my empty directory, we can see that I just have a FastAPI empty folder, and I have my terminal open, and that is it. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a virtual environment within my FastAPI folder. And a virtual environment is more or less just an environment where we can download the dependencies for FastAPI, and those dependencies are going to be downloaded just for this project. So if we delete this project, all the dependencies that we downloaded and libraries and all the external stuff is going to get deleted as well. And this is super easy to make inside PyCharm. Let's just go up to our file settings. And inside here, let's go to our project, which is FastAPI, Python interpreter. And I'm going to click this little gears button. And I'm going to click add. Inside here, we can see that the very first option is virtual ENV environment. I'm going to click this. And I'm going to make sure my base interpreter and location is on my current directory and that my base interpreter is my Python 3.9 that's currently installed on my machine. And then I'm just going to click OK, and it's going to create a virtual environment for this project. And here we go. We can see that VENV is now inside our FastAPI directory. Now we need to activate this VENV, which we can do by just going inside scripts folder and activating the application. So I'm going to first cd into VENV/scripts, and then I'm going to type activate to activate the command. And you know your VNV is running when it has these little parentheses on the outside of your terminal. Now if we do pip list, we can see everything that's currently installed in our virtual environment. And we don't have much. We have pip and setup tools. And to properly use FastAPI, we need to install FastAPI, and we also need to install Uvicorn. Now again, if you do not want a virtual ENV or a virtual environment, feel free to skip this entire step, but it is a good idea for future developments to create siloed environments for each project you are building. Now, after you install Python onto your machine, FastAPI requires two dependencies, one being FastAPI and the other one being Uvicorn. And once both are downloaded onto your system, you can now start using FastAPI. So let's download them. So the first thing I want to say is pip install FastAPI. And it's going to download a whole bunch of stuff. And then pip install Uvicorn. And some more stuff is getting downloaded. Now, FastAPI is the framework and Uvicorn is the ASGI server. And ASGI is just going to be the server that's going to be running our application. Now let's close our VENV and let's right click on FastAPI and create a new Python file called books. Now our books.py file is where all the magic is going to happen. And this is really where we're going to create our RESTful APIs. And now for a quick background on RESTful APIs travel and use the HTTP request methods. Now the popular request methods are get, post, put, patch, and delete. And for this video we're going to be using get, which is the read functionality, post, which is the create functionality, put, which is going to be updating and replacing a resource, and delete for deleting a resource. And we're going to use all of these in this quick introduction to FastAPI. Well, the very first thing we need to do is import FastAPI. And we can do this by saying from FastAPI, import FastAPI. Alright, and now once we import our FastAPI, we now want to say app, which is a new object, is equal to FastAPI. And now let's just create a new function, which we're going to call READAPI. So def read_API. And I'm going to return a dictionary of welcome as the key and Eric as the value. And now what we have to do to make sure FastAPI knows that this is a GET request method, we need to use an annotation at the top, which is @app.get, and then just an empty string within the parentheses. Alright, now let's save our file. If we hop into our virtual environment and we type in Uvicorn books::app -- reload, we will get a whole bunch of stuff printed to our terminal. And we can see that our application startup was complete, but something even more important is the Uvicorn is running on our port of 127.0.0.1:8000. Now if we open up our browser and we refresh this port, we're going to see welcome Eric in the very top left hand corner. If we want to right click and inspect, we can see even more information if we hop over to our network tab and we refresh the page and we click on this 127.0.0.1, we can see that we just called an API to our port, which is our FastAPI backend. We used the request method of get and we got a status code of 200, which means everything was okay. If we hover over the preview, we can see that we returned welcome Eric, and as a response, it's a JSON string. If we jump back into our URL and we say /docs, we will go to the FastAPI Swagger UI documentation that is created automatically with our FastAPI code. We can see that we have a default get read API. If we click on this and open it, we can see that this API requests no parameters. And if we try it out and we execute, we're going to get our response body of welcome Eric. And this is what makes FastAPI so powerful, is that we automatically have a Swagger UI documentation embedded within the application, and we as the developers don't even really need to do anything. This allows you as the developer to spend more time on code while letting FastAPI handle everything else behind scenes. Well, now let's create a path parameter. And a path parameter is a way for us to be able to manipulate the code of a GET request or really any other request method by passing in specific data beforehand. So in our app.get, which is above read API, let's do bracket name. And then as a parameter for our read API function, let's say name of type string. And now instead of passing in Eric automatically, let's pass in name so the user gets to dictate what gets printed through the API. If we save, and our application is going to automatically reload because of our -- reload within our terminal command, and we go back to our application and refresh the page, we can see that our read API now requires a parameter, and this parameter is called a path parameter. If we want to try it out and say example user and execute, our application will now say welcome example user, also with a 200 status code response. Again, this is super cool because now we're allowing users to be able to manipulate the API themselves. Well, now we want to send in a bigger piece of data. We want the data to be a post request, which will allow the user to be able to send a large amount of data, like an entire Python object. But before we do that, we want to use Pydantic as our data validation. Therefore, when we create a new class or object that is going to be consumed by a post request method, our Pydantic will be able to validate the data before manipulating any of the application. And yes, Pydantic will do this all for us so we don't have to do it, which means we can focus more on code while allowing FastAPI and Pydantic to do everything else behind scenes. Well, to import Pydantic, right under our FastAPI import, we're going to say from Pydantic import base model and field. And now right above our read API, I'm going to create a new class called book. And as the parameter, I'm going to say base model so we can extend the object. And inside book, we're going to have an ID, which is of type UUID, which we're also going to have to import. So from UUID, import UUID. Now a book has a title, so we want a title of type string. But here's the trick. We want this title of type string to equal field. And in the parentheses of field, we're going to say min_length, so minimal length, equals 1. That means a user must type in a string of a title with at least one character for our Pydantics to approve the data validation. Now we're going to want to do the exact same thing with author. So author of type string equals field, but this time we're going to say minimal length equals 1, but we're also going to add a maximal length of 100. So min_length equals 1 and max_length equals 100. And I will show you all of this in our Swagger UI documentation of our API successfully working with data validation passing and our API failing due to invalid data. Now the next thing we want to create is a description. Our description will be of type string with a field of minimal length 1 and a max length of 100, so very similar to our author. And now our last one is going to be rating, which is going to be of type integer. Now we want this to be equal to field, but now we're going to be adding something different. We're going to say rating needs to be greater than -1, but less than 101. Now, greater than -1 is 0, and less than 101 is 100. So it's going to be an integer that sits between 0 and 100. So our rating is just going to be 0 to 100. All right, now we created our book class and book object, which is going to have an ID, a title, an author, a description, and a rating. Well, now the next step we need is a list of books. So let's just create an empty list, which we're going to be calling books. All right, and now let's create a new book. So to create a new book, we're going to create a new function under our Read API. And this function is going to be called create book. So we can say def create book. We're going to be wanting to pass in a book of type book of our class object. We're going to want a books.append book, so our books list is going to be adding this book to the list. And then just so the user can see what book they just appended, we're just going to return the book that they submitted back to them if we get a successful 200 request. And right above our create book method, we're going to say @app.post, and this time an empty string. And we're doing this just so FastAPI knows what type of API request method we should be using when this create book is getting called. And while we're here, let's enhance our app.getRequest method, our read API, to remove any kind of path parameter. And instead of returning this dictionary, we're going to return the list of books. So as we create books, we're going to append them to the books list. And then when we call our read API get request method, we will start seeing a list of all the books we create. We will also need to remove name from the parameters. Well, now let's open up our browser and refresh the page. And when we refresh the page, we're going to see our read API, but we're also going to see our create book API. Now, if we open up our read API, we can see that we no longer need any kind of path parameter. And if we try it out and execute, we're just going to get a successful response, but an empty list because we haven't created any books yet for our books list. Let's now jump over to our post request method and open up our create book functionality. Here we can see that we don't need any kind of path parameters, but what we do need is a request body attached. And a request body is the actual object of the book we're going to be passing to our backend service. And here we can even see an example of the schema that is needed for our request body. We have an ID, which matches a UUID. We have a title, which needs a string value, and author, which needs a string value, a description that needs a string value, and a rating, which needs an integer between 0 and 100. If we click try it out, we now get our UUID and we can manipulate all of this data for our API. Swagger UI doesn't only document all of your APIs, but they allow you to be able to manipulate the APIs that you send and receive so that you have full control over testing your APIs. Pretty cool. So let's keep this UUID. Let's make the title Eric's FastAPI course. Author is Eric Roby. and description, the quickest way to learn FastAPI. With a rating of 100. And I'm going to now execute the API. And if we scroll down, we're going to see that we get a successful response with this book now created. Awesome job. If we scroll back up and we go to our Read API and we click Try It Out and Execute, we're going to see that we get a response body, which is a list with a book object inside. So our list variable of books is now holding book objects of books that we just created. Now, fun fact, this course really does exist, and it's a huge master course where we go over authentication, authorization, JWTs, which is JSON Web Tokens, databases, full stack development, and more, all using FastAPI. If you're interested with learning even more about FastAPI, check the link below in the video, and it'll give you a link directly to this amazing master course. But now let's jump back into our post request method to create a book. I'm now going to change the rating to 110. If we want to recreate this book, but with a rating of 110, and we click execute, we're going to see that we get an error, unprocessable entity, with a status code of 422. And we can even see that Pydantic returns in our response body, which is the response from our API. There's a message, ensure this value is less than 101, with value error not under less than, with a limit value of 101. If we jump back into our code, we can see that in our class, we say rating must be greater than -1 and less than 101. Pydantic is doing data validation on the spot for our new RESTful APIs. It is doing everything for us, and we as the developers do not need to do any kind of code to make sure that the validation is successful before running our application. Pydantic is taking care of all of this for us, and this is exactly what we want to happen. All right, and now from here, let's create 2 more request methods. We're going to be doing put and delete. But before we do put, let's implement HTTP exceptions. And now HTTP exceptions will allow us to catch errors that we create using business logic that maybe Pydantics won't catch. And I'll show you exactly how that's being used. But we must first import HTTP exceptions into our application. So from FastAPI, import FastAPI, let's also import HTTP exceptions. And now let's scroll back down, and right under our post request method, we're going to be creating a new function which is called update book. And now our update book function is going to have a book ID, which is of type UUID, as a path parameter, and a book object as a parameter. And I'm going to add some spaces just so we can see more of my code within the IDE. We're going to be creating a variable called counter, which is equal to 0. I'm going to say for x in books, counter plus equal 1. If x.id is equal to book ID, then books at the location of counter -1 equals book. And then return books counter -1. So what is this code doing? Now this code is looping through all the books on our list to see if any of the books in our list has a UUID that matches the path parameter of this put request. If it does, that means we want to update that book. So we're going to be swapping the values of the book in the list with the request body that's submitted with the API itself. And then afterwards, we're going to say raise HTTP exception. So if in our list there is no UUID of a book that's getting passed in with our path parameter, we want to return a status code of 404 with a detail saying ID of our book ID does not exist. And of course, above our update book, we need to add an annotation. And this annotation is going to be @app.put, and we're going to be passing in a path parameter of /bookid in brackets. And now let's create one more function, which is our delete book functionality. Here, we're going to say def delete book. And as a parameter, we're going to say book ID of type UUID with also a counter equals 0. We're going to loop through the books. If we find a UUID that matches our path parameter, we're going to delete that book. So let's go ahead and do 4x in books counter plus equal 1. If x.id is equal to book ID, then we want to delete the books at the location of counter -1 and to add the colon after book ID. And then finally, let's just return ID of our book ID is deleted. And again, if there are no IDs that match the IDs in the books list, an HTTP exception with a status code of 404 with a detail of ID book ID does not exist. And at the very top of our delete book, we again need to do an annotation of @app.delete /bookid as a path parameter. All right, and now let's save our application. Let's now go back to our browser and refresh. And now if we close, we're going to see two more request methods, a put and a delete. Now let's quickly start and use our get. If we come over here and say try it out and execute, we're going to see that there's nothing in our list, and that's because when our application gets reset, the list is defaulting back to empty. That's because we don't have a database or anything currently in this application. But for now, let's just recreate two more books. I'm going to come over here and say try it out. And inside here, I'm going to again say the title is Eric's FastAPI course by Eric Roby, and the quickest way to learn FastAPI with a rating of 100. And now I'm also going to create another book. This book I'm just going to use as an example. So I'm going to say example title, example author, and example description with a rating of 90. And I'm going to make sure our UUID is different, so I'm going to add a 0 at the end. Now if we go up to our read API and we execute this, we can see that we now have two books inside our API. Well, in our first book, which is the quickest way to learn FastAPI, I think it would sound better if we used the fastest way to learn FastAPI. It kind of goes with the fast, standpoint of FastAPI. So let's copy this UUID. Let's scroll down to our put request. And inside here, we can see that our put requires a book ID and a book schema. So let's say try it out. Let's type in our book ID. And again, right here, we will match up our book IDs. Let's now type in our title as Eric's FastAPI course. The author is going to be Eric Roby, and the description this time is going to say the fastest way to learn FastAPI with a rating of 100. If we execute this, we can see that we get a status code of 200 with this successfully submitted. However, if we scroll up to our GET request method and we execute, we can see that we still only have 2 books. However, the first book now says the fastest way to learn FastAPI instead of saying the quickest way to learn FastAPI. So we now have a GET request method that retrieves all FastAPIs we created, our POST request method which creates a new book, and a PUT which will update a current book that we have. Now let's use the delete functionality to delete this example book. Let's grab this UUID and let's scroll down to our delete API. Now our delete API just requires a book ID which is of type UUID as a path parameter. If we click try it out and we pass in our UUID as the path parameter and we execute, we will see that we get a status code of 200 with an ID of this UUID was deleted. If we change it and make this number not exist, and we execute, we can see details of our raise HTTP exception showing with a status code of 404 with a detail of this UUID does not exist. However, the first time we called the delete API, it did exist. So if we scroll back up to our GET API request and we click execute, we can see that the example book was deleted and the only book we have left is Eric's FastAPI course, which is currently the fastest way to learn FastAPI. Now, this wraps up the FastAPI introduction, where we learned all about get, post, put, and delete, and how fast you can create Swagger UI documentation based off of the RESTful APIs you just created. Using RESTful APIs is an extremely modern way of doing development. And I hope this video helped you with your journey of creating RESTful APIs using Python. And I hope I can see you in a later video.